He had not told anyone of his hiking plans and had no way to call for help. Assuming he would die without intervention, he spent 5 days sipping small amounts of water and slowly eating small amounts of food while trying to free his arm. After running out of food and water on the 5th day, Ralston carved his name, his date of birth, and his presumed date of death into the canyon wall. He then videotaped his last goodbyes to his family because he did not think he would survive the night. After waking at dawn the next day, he had an epiphany. He thought that if he could break his radius and his ulna in his arm, using the tool that he'd been trying to chip away at the rock, that he could amputate his arm with his pocket knife. It took about an hour to free himself. He climbed out of the canyon he was in. He rappelled down a 65-foot wall and began walking towards his car, which was still 8 miles from where he was, when he ran into a family who was vacationing. They gave him water and food and got him help. He was rescued within 4 hours of amputating his arm. He went on to give motivational speeches and write a book, and in 2007, in a speech that he gave in Switzerland, what he said about his experience was this: "I did not lose my hand, I gained my life back." All right. And as Ralston gained back his life through enduring what could have been a fatal experience, we have James encouraging us to do the same in our own lives. All right. James, the brother of Jesus, pens this letter to believers from a place of surrender. Yeah. He could have easily called on the prestige of being the brother of our risen Savior. He instead reminds us of the need to be in servitude to God. All right. Early history records that James was such a man of prayer that he had thick calluses on his knees from praying. And when he was martyred by being pushed from the top of the temple, he did not die immediately, but yet he prayed for the men who beat him to death. Jesus, a servant of God, gives us clear instruction on how to handle our trials. Now let's be clear, there's no question they'll come. Job 14 says that a man born of a woman is few days and full of trouble. 1 Peter 5 says that trouble won't last always. John 16 says that in this world you will have trouble. And Matthew 6 says each day has enough trouble of its own. Our troubles and our trials are sure to come. But let's take a look at what James has to say about it. First, he tells us that there's purpose in our trials. He says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Know that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete and lacking nothing." For me, for a very long time, verse number 2 was very oxymoronic. When you think of joy and joyous occasions, I didn't think of trials and troubles. All right. Instead, I thought of births and weddings and graduations and promotions, and if you're anything like me, warm apple pie and ice cream make the list too. These are times that instinctively make our hearts swell with joy. But James is compelling us to find joy in our trials. He's not saying that they'll feel like joy, but rather that we should find joy in them. Our trials are a time of joy, not of discouraged resignation. History tells us that discouraged resignation will keep us in a place a lot longer than we want to be there. Look at the children of Israel and how a 40-day trip to the promised land turned into 40 years because of their discouraged resignation. Have you ever met a person that keeps going through the same trial over and over again? They never seem to come out of one, or they're always in one. Someone who's always having relationship problems, and it's the same problem with a different face. And someone who's always looking for a better job, but they're taking those same problems to a different company. And someone who always has money problems, and it's the same problem with a different bill collector. Someone who is always hollering, woe is me, and why is this happening to me? Someone, when you call and ask what they've been up to, they always have a long, drawn-out story about their troubles. And with that person, you've gone from listening and offering prayer and encouragement to simply saying, it'll work out. It always does. And let me call you back. Those people are difficult to encourage because they prefer to remain in the place of discouraged resignation instead of finding the joy in the testing of their faith. And if we're not careful, they will try to bring us down there with them. And let me quickly point out that our trials don't produce faith. That's not what James is saying here. Either you have it or you don't. And our friends who have constantly remained in this place are lacking faith. And where do we get faith? Romans 10:17 says, so then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by